For over 400 years, one play has pretty much defined the very idea of tragedy. It's a ghost story, a detective story, and a bloody tale of revenge that has absolutely captivated the world. So what is it about a 400-year-old story about a Danish prince that feels so immediate, so modern? This is a dive into the madness, the murder, and the masterpiece that is William Shakespeare's Hamlet. We start on the freezing, wind-swept battlements of Elsinore Castle in Denmark. The guards are absolutely terrified because for 2 nights in a row, they've seen an apparition. A ghost that looks exactly like their recently deceased King Hamlet, wearing the exact same armor he wore in his most famous battles. King Hamlet is dead. But before his body is even cold, his brother Claudius grabs the crown. Worse, Claudius marries the king's widow, Queen Gertrude. Things really kick into gear when Prince Hamlet, who's still deep in mourning for his father, decides he's going to confront this ghost himself. So when Hamlet finally comes face to face with his father's ghost, it tells him a story that sets him down a dark and all-consuming path. He tells him that he was murdered in his sleep. Poison was poured into his ear by the very man who now wears his crown and sleeps with his wife, his own brother, Claudius. You can imagine this changes everything. All that grief Hamlet was feeling, it just morphs into this burning, fiery need for justice. He suddenly has this terrible secret mission, and it's about to become his one and only obsession. The ghost's direct order to him: revenge my foul and unnatural murder. Kill Claudius. Hamlet is now bound by duty, by love, to avenge his father. But think about it. How on earth is a prince supposed to prove that a sitting king is a murderer? Hamlet's answer is to stage a performance, a really dangerous one. He decides he's going to put on what he calls an antic disposition. Basically, he's going to pretend to be completely, utterly insane. The logic here is that if the court just writes him off as a lunatic, he can basically float around them like a ghost himself, watching the king, searching for proof, without anyone ever guessing his real mission. And you know what? His act is really convincing. Pretty much everyone, even the woman he loves, Ophelia, they all buy it. They think he's lost his mind. But the king's top advisor, Polonius, he notices something's a little off. He feels like behind all the crazy talk and bizarre behavior, there's some kind of logic, a method to the madness. The act starts working a little too well. Hamlet's fake madness begins to blur into something real. The pressure, the secrecy, the weight of revenge. It all starts crushing him. And for just a moment, Hamlet stops asking how to kill the king and starts asking whether life itself is worth enduring at all. To be or not to be? Should he keep living and suffer through this nightmare, or end it all? This fear infects everything, and the longer he thinks, the harder it becomes to act. So he stops trying to outthink fate. If the truth won't reveal itself, he'll force it out. So when a theater troupe visits the castle, he hatches a plan. He writes a scene for the actors that reenacts his father's murder. He calls this play the Mousetrap. The second the actor on stage mimics the murder, pouring poison into the ear of the player king, Claudius just loses it. He leaps to his feet, starts screaming for light, and storms out of the hall. In that one moment, his guilt is on full display for Hamlet to see. The mousetrap snaps shut. But this huge win for Hamlet, it's also what sends the whole story spiraling into tragedy. So right after the play, Hamlet goes to confront his mother, Gertrude. He hears a noise behind a tapestry. Thinking it's Claudius spying on them, he whips out his sword and stabs right through it. But it's not the king. It's that nosy advisor Polonius. And that mistake, that is the absolute point of no return. Killing Polonius, even by accident, is like knocking over the first domino. It sets off this horrific chain reaction of death and disaster that's going to take down the entire Danish court. And the fallout is just immediate. First, the murder sends Polonius's daughter, Ophelia, into this heartbreaking spiral of madness, and she ends up drowning. That, in turn, brings her brother Laertes storming back from France, breathing fire and wanting revenge for his father and sister. And of course, Claudius, being a master manipulator, sees his chance. He points all of Laertes' rage right at Hamlet. He sets up a friendly fencing match, but the blades are sharp, and one is dipped in poison. Oh, and for backup, a cup of poisoned wine. But Queen Gertrude accidentally drinks from that poisoned cup that was meant for Hamlet. Laertes manages to wound Hamlet with a poisoned sword, but then in the scuffle, they swap swords, and Hamlet wounds Laertes back. As he's dying, Laertes confesses the whole plot, and with his last ounces of strength, Hamlet finally gets his revenge, forcing the poison down the king's throat before he collapses and dies himself. And then, silence. The stage is just littered with bodies. The entire royal family is gone. So after all that carnage, you have to ask, why? Why are we still obsessed with this story? What is it about this 400-year-old play that just haunts us? Because Hamlet doesn't give us easy answers. Instead, it hits us with these huge, inescapable questions. Is revenge ever really right? Is justice obtained through vengeance ever truly clean? Or does it simply add to the sea of troubles? How do you act morally when the truth is shaky? Where does deep thinking end and madness begin? There's no easy answer. There's no one label that fits. Shakespeare suggests that while we may try to rough hew our intentions, there is a divinity that shapes our ends. And this leaves us to consider if we are truly responsible for the outcomes of our moral choices, or if we are merely players on a stage, destined for a bloody conclusion, regardless of our efforts to be honest. And maybe that's why, even after 4 centuries, we're still haunted by Hamlet. If you enjoyed this video, please consider hitting the subscribe button. Thanks for watching, and I hope you have a great year.